Financial Secretary talks about the government's financial situation ahead of the budget address. Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft grounded after a window came off midair. And the U.S. Supreme Court will rule on Donald Trump's eligibility on the ballot. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Financial Secretary Paul Chan said the government has to enter into a consolidation phase after the pandemic, after an increase in spending in the last few years, and that the government cannot increase expenses indefinitely. The FS added there may not be consumption vouchers to give out as a result of the government's financial situation. Timothy Lee has our top story.
On Saturday morning, Financial Secretary Paul Chan took part in a public consultation session regarding the upcoming budget, where he exchanged opinions with around 100 residents. The government announced this week that it will not sell residential land this quarter, the first time in 14 years. Some residents voiced their concerns about how that will impact the government's income and whether that will cause property prices to soar. This woman said many professionals like her are unable to buy property in the city and urged the FS to help people like them by lowering the down payment for mortgage from 30 to around 5 to 10%. Chan said he will look into the policy. He stressed the time for selling residential land is unsuitable given how quiet the market is. Besides property-related concerns, some residents said they are worried about the budget deficit. Such as this man, who suggested the government could decrease expenses by 2%. Chan echoed the sentiment, emphasizing the government needs to enter into a consolidation phase and reconsider its rising expenditure. But he noted he will not reduce spending when it comes to benefiting the livelihood of residents and helping those in need in the community. The FS added he is not concerned about government income from land sales being lower than the predicted $85 billion figure. He admitted it will take a few years for the government to break even. Chan said there may not be consumption vouchers for residents after considerations were made about the government's financial situation. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Hong Kong's new waste charging scheme will come into force in April. Citizens will have to buy designated garbage bags to dispose of their household waste. The Environmental Protection Department found that suspected designated garbage bags used during an earlier pilot scheme have been put online for sale. The EPD has reported such cases to the Customs Department for follow-up investigations. This as the EPD noticed several pictures of these green rubbish bags have been posted on a discussion forum for purchase online. The government said more than 3,000 authorized locations will begin selling these designated rubbish bags starting next month. It warns unauthorized individuals selling counterfeit designated bags are liable to a maximum fine of $500,000 and a prison term of 5 years. A crash between a fire engine and a double-decker in Tai Wah Hau in Kwai Chung injured 10 people, including the bus driver and 9 passengers. The hydraulic platform mounted on the fire services vehicle was badly damaged. The accident happened at around 2 p.m. The KMB bus and the fire truck were driving along the Kwai Chung section of Castle Peak Road towards the direction of Tuen Mun. The bus and the fire engine collided near Tai Wah Hau MTR station. All 10 injured were taken to Yan Chai Hospital for treatment. No one was hurt on the fire engine. Overseas, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Turkey for talks as fears of a widening conflict in the Middle East grow. This as Israel's war on Gaza continues and their military said they had also destroyed targets in Lebanon. David Garrett reports.
Antony Blinken holding talks with Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. The US Secretary of State is hoping to stop the war in Gaza escalating into a wider conflict. Blinken will also speak with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who has been a vocal critic of Israel's war. Recently, he compared Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Adolf Hitler. Blinken has made 4 trips to the Middle East since the Hamas attack on October 7th. The US's top diplomat will go to other countries in the region during the coming days. The possibility of an escalation of hostilities has become more apparent following the death of top Hamas official Salah Arouri in Beirut. Hundreds mourned at his funeral 2 days ago, and the leader of the Lebanese militia Hezbollah said that his group must retaliate after a presumed Israeli strike. It is unclear who killed Arouri. It is clear, though, that Israel's military are active in Lebanon. The IDF released footage of them hitting targets over the border, destroying what they described as terror infrastructure. They revealed fighter jets conducted strikes in Atta Ashab and Majd al-Zun in Lebanon. Israel has vowed to destroy Hamas. Meantime, the war in Gaza moves into its 4th month over the weekend. Smoke trails were seen in the sky this morning as cars carrying bodies arrived among crowds of people outside Deir al-Balah hospital. Israel has stepped up its bombardment of central and southern Gaza. More than 22,000 people in Gaza have died since the conflict began. Not all Israelis agree with the war. Dozens protested against the onslaught in Tel Aviv. They were then shouted at by passers-by who agree with the war. Police had to move in to break up arguments, but the protesters were determined to get their message across.
We're here protesting against the ongoing war and the atrocities happening in Gaza. We want the violence to end immediately. We want an immediate ceasefire. We hung up photos here of the reality that's happening in Gaza because people in Israel are blind and they do not see what they should see, which is the truth. This is why we put it in their face in the middle of Tel Aviv.
A convoy of United Nations trucks entered Gaza from Egypt at the Rafah crossing. The World Health Organization has also delivered medicines to Khan Yunis Hospital. This as the UN's humanitarian chief, Martin Griffiths, who is organising the relief effort, told the organisation Gaza has become uninhabitable.
Gaza has become a place of death and despair. He said the humanitarian community has been left with the impossible mission of supporting more than 2 million people, even as its own staff are being killed and displaced, as communication blackouts continue, as roads are damaged and convoys shot at, and as commercial supplies vital to the survival of people there are almost non-existent.
The United Nations are not the only aid providers. In a joint operation between Jordan and France, their air forces airdropped medical supplies from C-130 planes. The move was agreed by President Emmanuel Macron and King Abdullah II. Macron has described the humanitarian situation in Gaza as critical. David Garrett, TVB News.
The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear Donald Trump's appeal of a judicial decision barring the former president from the state of Colorado's ballot for the 2024 presidential election. This as current President Joe Biden described Trump as a threat to democracy. More from NBC News.
Tonight, the Supreme Court announcing it'll hear whether former President Trump can be banned from the ballot in Colorado because of his role on January 6th, taking up the Republican frontrunner's appeal of a Colorado court's ruling to kick him off the ballot. Mr. Trump arguing it's partisan election interference. The announcement coming just hours after President Biden visited the Revolutionary War site at Valley Forge, arguing democracy is at stake in November.
This is not rhetorical, academic, or hypothetical. Whether democracy is still America's sacred cause is the most urgent question of our time.
It's the president's latest effort to draw a contrast with Mr. Trump, who he's warning is an existential threat.
And yet Trump and his MAGA supporters not only embrace political violence, but they laugh about it.
Mr. Trump in Iowa firing back.
That's why Crooked Joe is staging his pathetic fear-mongering campaign event in Pennsylvania today. Did you see? He's saying, I'm a threat to democracy. He's a threat to democracy.
Tonight in the crucial Philadelphia suburbs, President Biden's message resonates with Democrat Elaine Tindall.
Is democracy an issue people are going to vote on in 2024?
I really think so. I have very positive, I have to be positive, that people are really going to understand that we can't continue without democracy, that everything else we can work out.
But democracy, and in your eyes, Donald Trump,
would be the end of it.
But for so many, the top issue is the economy, and 62% of Americans disapprove of President Biden's handling of it. Republican Nick Carnelia is one of them. Managing his family's deli, he's already had to raise prices twice in the last 3 years.
When it comes down to our bread, our meats, cheeses, sodas, even chips.
all costs more.
All costs more, and it raises prices for everybody.
Is it starting to come down?
No. Nothing is really going down. Everything keeps going up.
The death toll from the Japan earthquake has risen to over 100 people. Images from the town of Wajima in Ishikawa Prefecture show the extent of the devastation. Much of Wajima looks like a wasteland. Streets are filled with rubble after many buildings collapsed. Telegraph poles have fallen over. Residents in the western coastal city have said they have elected to sleep in their cars because of fears of aftershocks. A man was rescued 72 hours after the shock. Researchers have found that the coastline shifted over 200 meters towards the sea because of the earthquake. And still ahead, Foreign Secretary Wang Yi speaks on ChinaUS Ties on the 45th anniversary of diplomatic relations. Chief Executive John Lee visits Sha Kok Frontier Closed Area. And a nearly $100 million jackpot for tonight's Mark 6 draw. Welcome back. This year marks the 45th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and the United States. Foreign Minister Wang Yi called on both countries to start or resume bilateral exchanges and mechanisms in various sectors. Foreign Minister Wang Yi's remark came on Friday at an event marking the 45th anniversary of the establishment of Sino-US diplomatic relations. Wang, who's also a member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee, stressed peace is the most fundamental cornerstone of the bilateral relationship, and cooperation is the most correct choice for the two countries' relations, while win-win cooperation is the most essential feature of China-US exchanges. The foreign minister called on both sides to insist on such mutual respect to implement the consensus reached during the November meeting of President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden in San Francisco. Wang said China has no intention of replacing or overriding anyone, let alone seeking hegemony. And China is committed to building stable, healthy, and sustainable China-U.S. relations on the basis of mutual respect. Wang said China-U.S. relations have gone through twists and turns, which has brought important lessons. Wang said Washington should respect the choice of the Chinese people and China's path of development. Wang also said both sides should manage their differences effectively through foresight and insistence on respect to their differences. Wang added both sides should continue to make full use of the mechanisms restored or established in the fields of diplomacy, economy, finance, commerce, and agriculture to promote mutually beneficial cooperation. Addressing the reception, too, was David Mealy, U.S. Deputy Chief of Mission for the Embassy of the U.S. in Beijing. He said the U.S. side is willing to implement the consensus reached by the two heads of state and promote the steady development of bilateral relations. Hong Kong's Greater Bay Airlines is set to have 50 more passenger planes between this year and 2027. These new aircraft were bought in a deal with Boeing in March last year. At the time, GBA Airlines Chairman Bill Wong said the new fleet of planes will have better endurance and can help drive down operating costs. They are also expected to help the carrier introduce new routes. Chief Executive John Lee visited the Sha Kok Frontier Closed Area today, which recently implemented the second phase of opening up to visitors. Timothy Lee reports.
This morning, Chief Executive John Lee made his way to the Sha Kok Frontier Closed Area and met with operators of local shops to find out more about how their business is going. Speaking at a dried seafood store, Lee asked about its puffed rice before enjoying the crunchy snack himself. The CE stayed for a few minutes and purchased some of the products, saying he was doing his part to boost the local economy. Under the second stage of the opening up, individual travelers can visit the area after online registration. Local business operators welcomed the move. This merchant said business has been improving along with the increase of tourists in the area, and that she hopes Sha Kok can have more restaurants and better supporting facilities. Lee later visited local attractions such as the Starling Inlet and Fish Lantern Square and interacted with members of the local community. He also attended a dragon boat performance at the Sha Kok Pier. The CE said more than 860 tour groups and close to 34,000 tourists have visited the border town since the first opening phase was implemented in June 2022. He added the figure shows the uniqueness of the region and that the government will bring more dynamism to Sha Tao Kok to boost business. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The jackpot for tonight's Mark 6 draw is likely to reach nearly $100 million for one single $10 winning unit. There were no first prize winners in the last 5 rounds of lottery. They include a New Year's snowball draw. So a jackpot of over $82 million has been rolled over to the draw this time. Some citizens tried their luck today at this betting branch on Stanley Street in Central, which is seen as the luckiest branch in Hong Kong. Tonight's first division prize fund could reach $96 million for a single $10 lottery ticket. The draw will be held at 9:30 p.m. Organizers of the 3-day-long Farmfest event at Mong Kok Pha Hui Park said entrance numbers exceeded expectations. The farmers market features more than 400 stalls selling mainly homegrown organic fruit and vegetables. Event organizers said visitors to the park yesterday increased by over 30% compared with the same period last year. Many vendors there said residents are eager to spend. Overseas again, cities across the U.S. are bracing for extreme weather. Forecasters warn that a storm system could prompt intense rainfall and possible tornadoes next week in the northern part of the country. This report from NBC News.
Tonight, a ferocious winter storm charging east with wrecks stacking up in its wake. In Arkansas, authorities say a burst of heavy snow today stranded numerous semis. Nearby, SUVs wrecked, more semis stranded.
We started slipping and sliding, slowed down to about 20 miles an hour.
Meanwhile, in Galveston, Texas, streets flooded by heavy rain. This as snow falls in Amarillo. This punishing system now taking aim at the East Coast.
I think the storm's been a long time coming.
More than 30 million Americans from Maine down through northern Georgia are under winter alerts this weekend, with some cities like New York and D.C. expecting a rain-snow mix, while Boston could get slammed with 6 inches of snow. Hartford and Albany, up to a foot.
We would encourage all drivers and anyone to avoid travel during this storm.
A needed reminder amid something of a snow drought out east.
We haven't had a storm in a while.
I'm excited. I'm ready to shovel.
New York hasn't seen more than an inch of snow in 691 days, its longest streak on record. Philadelphia and D.C. topping 700 days. At this salt yard near Boston, trucks lined up with nearly 300,000 tons of road salt on hand.
No one likes snow and ice, but we do.
You're in the minority here.
We're in the minority here.
Tens of millions bracing for a punishing storm that could bring, for many, their first snowfall in nearly 2 years.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been in hospital since New Year's Day, the Pentagon have revealed. A spokesperson said the head of the military suffered complications following a recent elective medical procedure, but was recovering well and is expecting to resume his full duties today. The Pentagon did not say whether Austin ever lost consciousness. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.